All right. Well, listen, thank you guys for joining me. I am Marc Silber. I'm an author in Carmel, California. And this show is brought to you by our good friends at Bay Photo Lab. I'm continuing the discussion that I started in the previous video, and you guys should watch that, but you don't have to because I'm going to tell you where we're going here. We're talking about the subject of creativity and what gets in your way as a creative. What's the biggest, absolutely the biggest barrier to creativity is fear. Fear comes in many flavors, many different flavors. There can be a physical fear like, I'm going to go surfing and the waves are really huge. Well, that's kind of a good thing that I have a little bit of fear about that. Because now I'm going to either not go and get myself racked up, or I'm going to really prepare myself properly. Speaking in front of a large group, I actually have noticed, like when I don't have fear, a little bit of stage fright, I'm not talking about being paralyzed, but a little bit of that actually can help you do a better job. I've gone up against an audience or with an audience where I'm feeling very complacent and I'm not on my game. But I'm not talking about that kind of fear. I'm talking about the kind of fear that can shut you down. And what are the flavors of fear that can get in your way? Well, we have some obvious ones. Fear of failure is probably your biggest one, and that can prevent you from even starting. Fear of being rejected or criticized, huge ones. But what I'm here to talk to you guys about, and that's why this is really a part 2 to what I was discussing in my previous video. My purpose is to help you overcome fear and other opposing forces to unleash your creativity. Now, here's a strategy I'm going to give you. So, fear is a really formidable enemy. And when you're up against a really big enemy, it's a good idea to take some advice. There's a really interesting book that I highly recommend for lots of different reasons called The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu millennia ago when he was teaching some warriors basically how to represent this emperor. And it's full of really interesting and important data. But one of the things he said is the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Back up a little bit. The quote that I'm framing this around is the enemy of creativity is fear. That's from Seth Godin, fantastic author. The enemy of creativity is fear. It keeps you from operating at your best level. It keeps you from even getting out there and doing what you should be doing as a creative person. And it can completely send you off in the wrong direction. That's what fear does. I used to go on mountaineering. I was a mountaineering instructor, and one of the things I had to overcome for myself and certainly with my students is fear. Now, that's a really real fear. You could fall and hurt yourself or die. And you have to kind of learn that if you have the skills, if you have the tools, you can overcome that fear. Doesn't mean you're going to not ever have fear again. In fact, that's pretty unreal. But if you're armed with the tools, you can overcome it. And this is very similar to how we approach this with creativity. So think about this. If fear is the enemy, and Sun Tzu said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. We don't want to fight fear. We want to subdue it. How do we do that? Step by step, when you learn the creative process, you learn the tools of creativity. And that's something I've decoded over the last 10 years, but really I've been working on it for probably 50 years. I'm not kidding. What is the creative process? What are the steps to the creative process? And how can you get better at each one? Because the better armed you are with those tools, the less fear is going to shake you. And that includes, by the way, your own handling of your audience. Because in that audience, subjects various studies have been done. 20%, unfortunately, of our fellow human race tends to be on the vampire side of the ledger. Not productive people, destructive people. You walk down the street, you pass 10 people, 2 of them are not going to be people you want to be friends with. Well, that leaves 8 people that you can. That's not bad. Thank goodness the reverse isn't true. That would be a really bad culture to be living in. So by step, by learning these tools of creativity, you can actually depower fear. Right? Think about it. The more you know, the less you are paralyzed by this subject called fear. And what I'm here to do is to give you guys those tools. That's all I really ever talk about, one way or another. Even when I'm interviewing other photographers, the reason I've done that is because I know they have the talent and the tools and the technique to pass along to you. Give any one of these guys a look and you'll see what I'm talking about. Bob Holmes. And he tells his story from going from being an architect in London to deciding to be a professional photographer. And he said his amateur work wasn't all that good. He was able to overcome any fear by walking into the editor of the National Geographic's office, talk about huevos, and presenting himself and saying, I want to go out on an assignment for you. And he was hired because the editor said, if you can get into my office, you can get out there and get the story and the photographs that I need. I can tell you hundreds of stories where I've done kind of the same thing. Here's a good one. I had a big project that I was going to do for a very large company in New York on Wall Street. Very large company. Almost synonymous with Wall Street. And I had taken the project and gone back and forth with them. And if you have been in a professional capacity where you're sending emails, you're setting up calls, and then one day they just stop responding to you, you know what that feels like? And they're just dropping me. They don't want to talk about this anymore. It's a horrible feeling because you've probably really invested a lot of energy up to that point. And I had. Well, I was on Wall Street doing a project for another big client, and I happened to be walking by the building, the headquarters of this massive client. And I thought, I'm going to try to get an appointment with this guy. He hasn't answered my emails lately. He's not answering calls. I'm a dead duck. What have I got to lose? So I walk up. Their security is enormous. They have security outside the building, which we now see a lot more with COVID. But there was a security outside before you even got to the inside security. And I went up to the security guy and I said, I'd like to have an appointment with the name of the guy. And he goes, is he expecting you? And I said, no. Well, let me try. And that's never a good sign. Let me try. So he gets his voicemail. Okay, another sign that's probably not going to go anywhere. He leaves a message. I go, okay, look, I don't want to hang around here all day. I'm going to go to the Museum of Modern Art, soak up some of this cool stuff. And I go back to my hotel room and change into my jeans and go off to the Museum of Modern Art. I'm walking down the street. It's starting to rain a little bit and the phone rings and it's this guy. He's the VP way high up of this big company. He says, Mark, do we have an appointment? No, but I'm literally in your neighborhood. I just thought it would be a good idea to come by and talk. He goes, well, can you be here in 15 minutes? Sure. Now I'm back in my jeans. I got to go rushing back to the hotel room, put my suit back on. I didn't have time to be afraid. I was too hypered up. And then I've got to meet this guy in 15 minutes. So if you've ever had the experience of running inside a suit when it's already raining, it's not great because talk about sweating and whatnot. So I made it back. I went up, he came down, got me, took me through the 2 barriers of security, went up to his office, sat me down. He said, "Give me your pitch." I gave him my pitch. I wasn't prepared for this, by the way, either. I didn't have on my laptop the whole, pitch deck and all that. I had to just pull it out of my head. I gave him the pitch. And he said, "You had me. It's like you had me at hello. You had me with your entrepreneurial spirit. What if I hadn't done that? What if I'd said, oh, I'm not prepared. I don't want to do it. I got jitters in my stomach." And fortunately, I didn't even give myself an opportunity to get jittery. I just pushed and I made it happen. And that was a multi-6-figure project, huge project. But that's what it takes, guys, to overcome the fear. Did I have fear? Of course. Was I worried about getting rejected? Of course. Who wants to get rejected? Was I willing to put myself out there and overcome that stuff? Yeah. And that's what I did. And it's the things that you didn't do, the opportunities that you missed, are going to be the ones that often stick with you the hardest. If you try it and you fail, well, at least you put yourself out there. But I want you guys to think about it. You have opportunities to get your work out to the world, and you should take them. And you should look for them constantly. I'm not kidding. Jared can attest to this. I'm constantly looking for opportunities to do business with people, whether it's doing a video production or getting my book sold somewhere or writing a new book or getting my photographs sold. I'm constantly looking for ways to put my work out to the world. It's something I highly recommend for you guys. Okay. So there's my strategy. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. I see, in that case, I subdued the enemy, fear, without fighting. I just pushed up so fast that it didn't have a chance to stop me. There's numerous places I could have stopped before I got to the guards and whatnot. I could, they're not going to, they're not going to listen to me. I'm not ready for this. Whatever, I'm not good enough. The project isn't good. They probably don't want me anyway. Blah, 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 blah. But, that's what won the project, is that I didn't have those things. I was pushing through, and it was a fantastic, award-winning production. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this, you guys. Step by step, we're going to learn and utilize the tools of creativity in this book and in my other books that will help you overcome fear and unleash your creativity. Are you guys with me on that? Does that sound like a good idea? Stay tuned. We're going to do this some more. Meantime, I do want you guys to go to my Instagram, because I'm putting these out all the time, little reels, little bits of what I'm talking about. And it's pretty much going out on a daily basis, maybe even 3 times a day. We're really revving this thing up. So you need to hear this stuff over and over and over and over again. You need to hear it many times and let it sink in. So that's one way you can do that. So definitely go to Marc Silber, at Marc Silber on Instagram, and follow me. Okay. Well, that's it for today, folks. I want to remind you to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. And as always, I love it when you guys leave your comments. I'll reply to any of them. And give me a thumbs up. Sharing is what I really love. When you guys think this is important enough to share with your friends, that's a big compliment, but it's also important. I know what I'm talking about here. This is not surface level drivel. This is deep stuff that can make a big difference, not just in your photography, but in your entire life. When you move your life up to a higher level of creativity, you just feel better. Okay, and it's not about pretending that these barriers don't exist. It's learning how to deal with them correctly, and that's what I'm here to show you. Okay, well, that's it, you guys. Thank you again. Last but not least, and you can say this with me, remember to get out and capture your own images of life. See you guys soon.